Bodies get to dropping, nigga, bonjour. I got something to say to the pigs. Yeah, I just got an M for a gig. Yeah, I just wrote an M on my kids. Yeah.
Hope y'all doing well. You just heard the beat, so without too much talk, let's just get into the breakdown. So since we're gonna be cooking up a beat for Future, he usually goes for these high BPM beats. And for today's sample, I went with 158 BPM. We got the project file here, but let's start with the sample first. The first sound comes from Analog Wab, and I'm using this Bliss preset, which comes from my Illusions preset library, and I laid down this extremely simple one chord melody. What I did here was I just took these notes from the scale and I emphasized these half-step intervals here and here, which basically create this tension which makes your melody sound darker. And using these notes from the scale, I just broke it down into a melody, which I then copied over like 4 times. I wanted a similar sound to layer the melody just to make it more full, so I got this one shot and I copied the exact same pattern. It was sounding good, but I wanted to have more textures in it, so I took both these layers, I routed them to one mixer track. I added this auto chroma plugin with the small marble room preset. Now after that, I just took these 2 sounds with the effects on and I exported them and I pitched them down. Moving on, I wanted a top line, but since we're following this orchestral live instrument vibe, I wanted something which complements the sound selection, so I went with a violin. I'm using this Chris Hine ensemble violin with the short 3 preset, and I just laid these notes. And one thing you should notice is I've played with the velocities here, so they kind of progress and they build up. And since I wanted the strings to have a little bit more dynamic and some movement, I added this pancake plugin, which just moves the sound from one ear to the other. Moving forward, since we're sticking to this live instrument orchestral vibe, I pulled up this Keyscape grand piano and I wanted to give the sample a little bit more low end, so I added these root notes. Moving on, I added this synth one shot, which is pretty much playing the notes which are in the other top line melody. And I really wanted the synth one shot to cut through the mix, so I added this EQ which really boosted the high end of the sound. And finally added this texture accent thing which still complements the whole sample, and when you play it with the other top line, it sounds like this. Like you can hear that liquid reverse dark texture in the background. And to mix the sample a little bit so it sounds more coherent and put together, I added this ozone imager, which basically makes everything under 200 Hz in mono, so we have a tight low end. And after that I added this God Particle plugin, which I turned down a little bit. Essentially it just works as a compressor and compresses the whole melody. Now moving on to the drums, it's important to not overdo it, and at the end I'm gonna add an acapella so you can see what the final beat sounds like. But starting off with the hi-hats, I added extremely simple 2-step hi-hats, and after that I just added some rolls, trap snare, I added this counter snare at the end of every 4 bars. Moving on to the open hat, I added this open hat just as a little bounce. And finally, for the most interesting part, I added this 808. And there's one thing that you should notice here. I'm using these triplet rows. So I went here and I set it to 1/6 beat, which is basically triplets, and it just creates this interesting bounce. Also, I've played with the velocities, and when you play all the drums together, this is how they sound. All these drums come from my drum kits. If you want good drum sounds, check the link in the description. I have 3 free kits for you. Let's go over the mix real quick. Like, I've made a video on this before. You can go check it out here. If you want your 808s to actually hit, all you gotta do is turn them up a lot. If you have a soft clipper on your master, what you wanna be doing is you want the 808 to be pushing like past 0 dB. So that way it's gonna activate the soft clipper and it's actually gonna clip the 808. And I have it turned up all the way past 3 dB. Whenever you play it with other sounds, you can hear the distortion come in and it sounds saturated. Now let's hear the final product with the acapella.
Tell me what that lick read, one call. Pink diamonds popping out, cotton ball. Bodies get to dropping, nigga, bonjour. I got something to say to the pigs. Yeah, I just got an M for a gig. Yeah, I just blow the M on my kids.